what man can know the intentions of God? These words come from the groping soul. The Old Testament is a progressive self-revelation of God and of His holy will. In the period of the wisdom literature, more and more is being intuited, including certain truths about the beyond and the nature of the soul. And these questions in wisdom literature are of a universal type, fundamental questions of man himself before the mystery of his being and his destiny. And we have thought patterns coming in here which are not that different from even that of Stoic philosophy. The juxtaposition of body and soul. For a perishable body presses down the soul, very much like Plato seeing the soul as being imprisoned. And this tent of clay weighs down the teeming mind. That rather reminds us of the dying poet John Keats, when I have fears that I may cease to be before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain. We cease to make a noise at the last breath, but the soul can still talk on when the brain has actually uttered in writ, in print, in parchment, a part of itself that will be heard again every time the ancient page is overturned and opened. What voices are in a large library? It reminds me of student days, how over a long period one gets to know a soul and the beyond if one spends many months doing research on his work. One hears his voice and feels his mind. But then the Gospel gives us the fullness. We have in today's Gospel what is essentially the proposing of the way of perfection. Not just enough to make it, as it were, but the fast track, the shortcut, the channeling of energy, lest anything be dispersed. We need, however, to be aware that it is not enough to make a decision for that option, for in the last resort it is actually even there a means of what? What is common to all? Perfection of charity. And that perfection of charity, strangely enough, can at times be found outside the parameters of the evangelical counsels as such, in, for instance, the heroic mother, self-sacrifice par excellence, often unrequited by even a thank you. Having said that, the challenge is there and should not be watered down. A young man who might feel called at the altar should not turn it aside. A virgin, solicited by grace, should see the beauty of being called to be an angel upon earth, with a divine bridegroom who will not let her down. Alas, many a lost vocation didn't have a happy happy marriage. With regard to this specific issue, it is important to be aware that God has a huge, broad vision. Even should a soul try the way of the evangelical counsels and then for some reason turn back, the Lord will find that soul where he is. There is a will again. The will of the Saviour is intimacy with him even in that state, and the danger is that one forgets that and switches off to any more tendency towards perfection. There is also the perfection of Mary Magdalene, who loved much. The great Desert Father Pambo had an interesting thought on this point. He was not like some hermits who held that the hermit's life is the only way to save one's soul. Two monks were once disputing which would be the better man, he who gave away all his fortune and entered a monastery, or he who did not become a monk but expended his all on corporal works of mercy. Pambo answered, "Before God, both are perfect. There are other roads to perfection besides."